Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kathy Neifeld. I am one of the partners at Agency One, and I am thrilled to bring to you today, on behalf of Agency One, our friends from John Hancock. We are privileged to have with us Mark Berry, who is the Variable Life Vice President with John Hancock Insurance, along with our phenomenal external partner from John Hancock, Wayne Baldwin. When we spoke with Wayne so many months ago, and he said, we've got this B.O.S. business owner solution system that has been developed by some very, very smart and talented people at John Hancock, and it is a five-part webinar series. Originally, it was promoted as a four-part webinar series, but there was so much interest and it was so successful that they added a fifth webinar. And Agency One is thrilled to be bringing you all five segments of this webinar series. Today is part three, and that what we're focusing on today is planning for the family with business owner clients. For those of you who have not joined us before, as I said, we're privileged to have Mark Berry with us. And Mark has the responsibility of working with internal and external sales organizations to facilitate the development and optimization of VUL product placement and growth of sales across the customer base. Mark has significant experience in the business owner marketplace. There is nobody, in our opinion, that is more talented to present this B.O.S. system to you than Mark. And Mark is going to talk about planning for families of business owners for about the next 30 minutes. And then we're going to open it up to Q&A. Mark asked if we would address the Q&A at the end of his presentation. So as you're thinking about, as questions arise, either type them into the chat or type them into the Q&A, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mark, and thank you very much.
Kathy, thank you very much. And again, it means a lot to us. I know that goes without saying. I know I speak for Wayne as well when we say how much it means for us to be on here with you as well. So, Kathy, just sanity check. The screen looks good. Got the nice blue screen up there. You see it okay?
Yes.
Or see it? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. Those of you that have been on this journey with me already, this is the third in a four-part series, or now five-part. In the first two sections of this, we talked about the employees of the business owner and then the partners of the business owner. And what's fascinating over the years, what I've found is that it's very difficult with a business owner to break through the wall. And what I mean by that is when you meet with them, they either want to just talk about their business or just talk about their family. It's very difficult to get both in there. And that's why I've found that this conversation helped, this drawing that I do help me, because I don't ask permission to go from business to family or vice versa. I simply say, I want to look at their lives holistically. And I think that's helped me over the years because many of you know, if you meet with a business owner or really anyone, they'll tell you they already have an insurance agent. They'll tell you they're fine. They've got everything squared away. And especially, again, if you've met with them to talk about business insurance. And so what this is that transition over to the family side of things. And so to really set the stage, let's just go back through the original drawing. Again, the idea, for those of you that may have missed this is a napkin presentation. You could do it in 5 minutes, depending on how much detail you want to get into. But you simply put the boss right in the middle of this circle, and you let them know that the idea here is that we're showing them a business owner solution system. That's the acronym that BOSS stands for. And again, setting up the idea that we're not trying to sell to them today. What we're doing is having a conversation and see if we can help them with any types of solutions. So just to rehash what we already know, top of mind are the employees. So we talked about them a couple of weeks ago. The business partners I put to the right, the foundation of their planning, and what we're going to focus on today is their family. And then over to the left are their heirs, and that's what we'll discuss the next time that we're all together. But really focusing on the family, the first thing I think is probably the most obvious to all of us, and that is you can call this whatever you want, whether it be income replacement or a needs analysis. But this idea of do they have enough life insurance, right? Do they have the right amount? And what's interesting about that is that over the years, as all of us know, that changes, right? There's different phases of life where you may need more or less life insurance over those years. And so, the one thing I always say here is that this probably should be reviewed annually. It's very difficult to get anyone to review something like this annually, but I'm a minimum for a business owner probably every 3 years because they do have a lot of dynamics going on in their lives. Many people do, of course, but I think a business owner even more so. But there's so much more to it than just the right amount. But for those, if you need this, I just throw this out there that we at John Hancock do have our own needs analysis calculator. So if you need something like this, you can simply QR code what's on your screen there. It will take you directly to our needs analysis as a tool if that's something that can help you. So again, the important thing is, do they have the correct amount that they need to do the things they want to do? So that's certainly important. Here's kind of an example of what you'll get as a output from the needs analysis. It's clean, it looks nice, and you get this idea of how much coverage they need. So I just show you that so that you'll know that that's available. But I think what's also interesting is what I call the second level of policy review, and that is not just do they have the right amount of death benefit, but do they also have what I call modern policies? And sometimes when you say it that way, it may catch them by surprise. I doubt anybody's asked them that question, because they'll tell you they have plenty of coverage many times. Certainly, if they don't, that's your opportunity. But, sometimes breaking through and getting them to just quit crossing their arms and listen to you for a minute. So I asked this question: do you have a modern policy? And they'll ask, "What do you mean?" And I'll say, "Do you have these nice optional living benefit riders?" And it can explain it to them. I would say I would caution all of us, and I do it too. Don't assume they know what these are, right? I think we all know like the back of our hand what all these living benefit riders provide and what they can do and all that stuff. But just don't assume that any of your customers would know this because we sometimes I think we short ourselves by not taking the time to explain it. But these, of course, are those idea that, for example, a chronic illness situation, long-term care, the idea that if you need the care, you need someone to help take care of you, they can access this death benefit on these policies income tax free. And that's a strong, strong story, but they have to have the riders in place when they bought the policy. So that's kind of that next level of policy review. And then if you want to really get personal to a place that really they don't want to go, ask about their spouse as well. It's a fun quiz. If we were all in person, I would do this. This is a fun one in front of a room, and I know all of you would pass this quiz, but I can tell you I've been amazed at some of the responses, and it goes something like this. So my wife is 6 years younger than I am. And so what I ask in the room is if you could only insure one of us for a long-term care, right? Myself or my wife, which one would you pick? And a lot of times it's about a 50-50 response. The answer I think that's correct is if you could only do one of us, you should insure my wife. And the reason is probably obvious to most of you that I'm probably going to be the one that goes down first and she'll take care of me. Okay. But who takes care of my wife? And that's really the idea here too, is that don't lose track that these business owners in their family have, many of them have a spouse, right? And so let's talk about that too. But again, if you ask permission, they won't let you go here. But I just make it a part of my process to go through this and talk to them about this. And so the power of this really gets into a few things. And I think the first thing is as we talk about this idea of longevity risk, what does that mean really? What is this idea of longevity risk. And really, if you sum it up, this is one definition of many that I found on there. But basically what it says is you could live too long, right? It's kind of the idea. So, this financial risk that someone lives longer than expected, and I don't know what you all expect to live to. I don't know what my number is, but whatever somebody tells me, I hope it's 1 year more than that, right? So, but that's the idea of longevity risk, is this idea of living too long, and that may sound brutal, but that's a true moment to at least plan financially. One of the big things, of course, with living too long is this idea of being chronically ill. Okay, and as we all know, and again, don't assume your clients know this, is that this means that you need substantial help with either two of the six of activities of daily living, or there's a cognitive impairment. Now, the one thing I love to do is another one is a quiz in a room if we were all together, is challenge any of you, and I would say do this mentally for a moment. If I had one of you stand up in a room and recite all six of the activities of daily living, could you do it in 10 seconds or less? And so there's people that can, but in our industry, surprisingly, even people that do this every day for a living, these are things I guess we don't think about much. And frankly, what I'm going to share with you is I couldn't remember them. And I even tried to memorize them. And finally, I came up with a way, and I want to share with you today as a gift to you, a way that I came up with to remember all six of the activities of daily living. So if you want to try this with me, I call this Barry's ABCs of ADLs. My last name is Barry. And so here's how it goes. The A is ADLs, right? So that's how I remember I'm getting ready to do my ADLs. B is bathing. C is continence. D is dressing. E is eating. F is flushing. Now it's really toileting, okay? But for me, I had to, well, how can I remember that one? So in my mind, I'm saying flushing, but you're going to say toileting. And then G is getting up, or transferring is how it's officially named. And so, for those of you that I see 20 years from now, you're welcome, because I've had many people say this is exactly how they remember all six. It's really been a nice tool for me. But why would I do this with a client? Why even go through this? And here's why, because what I tell them is this, is that pick one of these. And if I told you tomorrow that you needed substantial help with one of these tomorrow, which one would you pick? I mean, pick any of them. And then think about what that would mean. It's first of all, it's embarrassing, it's demoralizing, it's frustrating, right? But then think about this, right? To be a chronic illness patient, you can't do two of these. So pick two, any two, and you're a chronic illness patient. And think about the frustration, what that's like. But also think about this. That also means most instances that someone else now is coming in to help. Who is that someone else? Have they thought about this? How does this work, right? And just the idea is don't be caught off guard by this. Let's think this through. Now, what I'll give you is the typical, I call it 5 steps of long-term care. This is a drawing I've done for a few years. And again, I would do it with clients, and I think it really helped them kind of pinpoint this. And you can get some very emotional stories for those of you that have dealt with this. You know exactly what I'm talking about here. But here's what I mean by the 5 steps of long-term care. So step one, someone becomes a long-term care patient. They've lost the ability to do two of six of the ADLs, or cognitive impairment. The first person to step up and help take care of them, if they have one, is their spouse, right? So they're right there. It then falls on the spouse to take care of them. How much does a spouse charge for this service? So financially, we're not out any money. There's no charge here for the spouse to do this. So step one is probably there's a lot of that going on right now as we speak. But then what happens? Then the spouse needs help, right? They just can't do it anymore. Who do they call on next? The kids. And for those of you that have dealt with this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I've done this twice. I've been the kid twice. And how much did we charge for this service? Well, we didn't charge anything either. And so the beauty of steps one and two is, financially at least, we're not out any significant amounts of money. But that's where things change after this, because step three, the kids finally need help, and they call in somebody to come to the home and either administer medications, do physical therapy, whatever it is. But this home health care has become a really big deal, as many of you know. And so, what's the cost of that? Well, for only 4 hours a day, only 5 days a week, it's around $32,000 a year. Now, that's starting to become quite a financial burden there, and that could go on a long time. And again, understand that's 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. If you got somebody coming to the home staying longer than that, some significant cost there. But even then, that's not enough. There does come a point where even at home care isn't good enough. And the next step is the assisted living facility. And these are some beautiful places. I mean, they really are magnificent places. This is where, of course, if they've fallen and they can't get up, they can push a button or there's somebody readily available. So the average cost in the United States is around 62,000 a year for assisted living. And then finally, there's the place no one wants to go, which is the nursing home, and that's right around just over 100,000 a year, $100,000 a year for that. And so, what did we do as an industry with this drawing? What we did is we looked at this and we said, well, let's break this up in what we called the benefit payment line. You can call it whatever you want, but what we looked at is we said, well, the first two steps is all informal caregiving. There's not really any cost there, so there's nothing to insure. At least in a classic sense, that's what we did. So what we did is we went after these last three steps and we said, well, these are the professional caregiving steps. So we came up with long-term care policies, linked benefit policies, even riders now on life insurance policies, and these were reimbursements. So the original attempt to help with this was the idea of reimbursing for these costs. You have a cost, whatever it is, you send in, you keep the receipts, of course, and all that stuff. The issue with reimbursement, as beautiful it is as it doesn't help us in steps one and two. Well, someone might go, yeah, but Mark, you said there's no cost there. Well, let's talk about that for a second. The number one reason that the spouse needs help in the first place from the kids is the failing health of that caregiver. And as you know, many times the caregiver may even die before the person they're caring for. So what's the cost for that? Well, that's immeasurable. You can't even put a price tag on that one. But what about the kids? Now, some of you again have done this. You know what I'm saying. According to the Wall Street Journal, did a study many years ago about who this kid is. This kid, on average, is a 45-year-old female that's the daughter or daughter-in-law of the person that's being cared for, and it cost her and her family on average $300,000 in lost wages, lost benefits, and out-of-pocket expenses. So don't tell me there's no cost there either. And yet, if they have a reimbursement policy, okay, even if they already have one, it doesn't help them in steps one and two. So what came next was this idea of indemnity. And as you know, indemnity means that once someone becomes a long-term care patient, there's a check that goes out regardless of the cost. Now, there's limitations to indemnity for sure, like the per diem, but man, I want to show you graphically. If you'll watch the screen, I'm going to click here and show you what indemnity does for this drawing. It takes this benefit payment line and it moves it all the way over to the left, because what indemnity is going to do is pretty much cover you right then. So the spouse could be getting a check. Certainly the kids could be getting a check. I can tell you for my situation specifically, my father-in-law, who was a very proud Marine, it was very emotional. Many times at the end, I was having to carry him from the car into the house. And I remember him very upset, telling me how much he's sorry that I'm even having to do this, right? Well, he didn't have any coverage, of course, but if he had had an indemnity policy, for example, I think the first check would have gone to a carpenter to come out and build a ramp so that we could push his wheelchair up into the house and give him some dignity. Probably the second check would have had modifications to the bathroom so he could do some things himself. You know, it was just, there's so many things you can do with an indemnity check. And so a lot of people would say to me, okay, then if I have an indemnity policy, I'm all good, right? Well, not so fast, because indemnity has limits to it as well. One is, of course, as I said before, the IRS per diem. It may be less than what your actual costs are. But as many of you know, indemnity riders aren't as efficient as reimbursement riders. And with reimbursement, of course, you can get reimbursed for the actual cost. So what I would throw out to you here is, as I said before about policy reviews, if you have a drawing like this in your mind, or it's even something you could show them, this is a second level of policy review is, yes, do they need the right amount of death benefit? For sure, definitely make sure that's correct. But also, do they have enough of this type of coverage, the riders? And in some cases, maybe if they already have a reimbursement type policy, maybe consider adding something that has indemnity as well. So a lot to think about there. I know that's a lot of information, but I think it really does help kind of paint the picture of how important now this idea of policy review is, because it encompasses so much going on with someone's life. What I would end with in this section here is that one of the discussions I hear a lot, especially from wirehouses and banks, financial advisor groups and things like that, is that when the first generation passes away, a very small amount of that second generation stays with this advisor, right? And you all understand what I mean there. If you were the one that actually placed a long-term care chronic illness type rider or policy on your customer here, one of the things I would ask is that we meet with that next generation and show them what's in place, because by the time it happens, they may forget. Gen 1 might even forget that they have them. And it really shows to the next generation how much you've helped them in that situation. Great opportunity to meet that next generation as well and take it to that step. And finally, I'll say here on this piece, what a great referral moment, because this is something that if you can place something like this for them, certainly any of their friends that they know probably need to talk to you as well. Make sure it's in place too, because if they didn't know about it, chances are their friends didn't know either. So a lot there with income replacement, but we're not done yet with family, because the other thing I would say for a business owner especially is this idea of retirement. And if we did a show of hands, I think I know the answer. If you ask a business owner, a small business owner, what's their retirement plan? What are they going to say? And I'm going to go ahead and say it for you because you can't tell me because I can't hear you, but they're going to say sell their business, right? That just always made me cringe when I heard that. Statistically speaking, and we have our advanced markets team keeps up with this, and Wayne, I know you've seen this too. Statistically, only about 30% of small businesses sell successfully. Only about 30%. So, and successfully can mean a lot of things, but at the price they thought they could get, in the time frame they need, whatever that may be. But I would also say it this way, and I've said this to business owners when they tell me that their business is their retirement plan. I say it this way. I'm like, so what that means is in your retirement plan, you basically have one stock, right? You're a single stock retirement plan. And when you say it that way, sometimes it jars them just a little bit. Because what I would say to them is, what if we pulled out a little bit, something on your behalf that you could put into this, and you don't know this is LIRP, right? Or whatever you call it, but it's an overfunded life insurance policy, minimum non-MEC solve, the whole thing, right? But really showing them not the idea necessarily of how the life insurance works. I mean, we can explain that, but really explaining to them this idea of how it can help them for their retirement, something that's income tax free and not even reportable to the IRS. So graphically speaking, I would show you, this is how people save for retirement today. If they have a qualified plan, that's usually the first place they'll go, a 401k or whatever. Again, many small businesses may not even have a substantial qualified plan available. But if they do, they're going to save there. And then they might have what I call this taxable bucket, whereas this is their investments with an advisor, the stocks, the bonds, the mutual funds, and all that. The issue with this bucket, of course, is this isn't tax deferred. It's fully taxable. As a matter of fact, some of the tax leaks away right as you go. Your dividends or whatever on stock, you're paying tax as you go on this one. And then as they get to be wealthy, we might even offer annuities. Some of you have sold annuities. You get this idea of this tax deferral too. A qualified annuity, by the way, goes in that left bucket. But this is really that diversified plan that we want to talk to people about. But here's the issue with all of this is this dash blue line here is what matters. This is the day they retire. And so what I tell my clients is, right now you're above this dash blue line. You're in that accumulation phase of your life. But the day you retire, you're going to move below this dash blue line to the distribution phase. And the message here is it doesn't matter what you're worth at retirement above this line. What matters is what you're worth below this line. And a sobering statement to people is this. When you look at your statements, whether it be a qualified plan, any type of investments, even your annuities, when you see that number of how much you're worth, that's not how much you are worth. That's how much you're worth to the IRS because there's unpaid tax in there. And this is graphically what I'm meaning. Qualified plan, you need money. You pay tax first, then you get the money. Taxable bucket, you pay whatever tax you got to pay, then you get the money. And same thing with annuities. You're going to pay gains on the annuities first, the tax, then you get the money. What we're talking about to a business owner is saying, what if we could show you this fourth bucket, the tax advantage bucket? Yes, it's life insurance, but understand how this works is that you can put almost an unlimited amount, however much they can put in there. And when they cross this dash blue line, it comes out income tax free and it's not even reportable to the IRS, right? So amazing story we have here too. I think this idea of turning this life insurance savings plan, whatever you call it, and really talking to them about the tax benefits of it at retirement. This way, they're not at the mercy of whatever administration or whatever Congress is in place at the time of retirement. So it's a beautiful story. To kind of end this flow here is I would say both of these solutions, of course, are on the same person. And so if you do a policy review and you end up placing a policy on them, you've sent them through underwriting, what a great opportunity now that you know their underwriting class to then go back, for example, to that LERP discussion and say, now that we know you're a preferred risk, I can show you some real illustrations, right? And that really, I think, personalizes it and makes it strong. So, like all of my stuff, I always like to ask simple, basic questions that all of you have asked a million times. So, I'm not teaching you new stuff here, other than what I would tell you again is the hardest part for all of us is ask the question and let them answer because sometimes I want to interrupt them if they pause and tell them the answer, right? So the first one, of course, is a big one. This is a basic question, but they need to know, is your family okay if they lost your income, right? If something were to happen to you, if you died an untimely death, are they okay? Right? And that's why we're here with the life insurance solution. How about this second one? What do you have in place for you and or your spouse for that longevity risk? Talk me through that, right? Let's make sure we're good there. And then other than your business, right? And maybe that's a way to ask it instead of letting them tell you the answer you're going to hear. I've done this too. Other than your business, what do you have in place for retirement? And as you can see, each of these questions open up a great opportunity to have, I think, a tremendous conversation with a business owner. So again, wrapping this up, this is that idea of the holistic approach to talking to a business owner, not just on their business side, but also on their personal side. And so with that, Kathy, I will turn it back over to you to see if there's any outbursts or questions from the audience.
Well, right now we don't have any, nothing has come in so far, but I encourage you to ask, submit your questions, whether it be about this presentation and planning with the family or the prior presentations, focusing on planning for business partners or anything really in the business owner marketplace. Mark is happy to address these questions. Mark, it was interesting. Somebody said to me the other day that the first question they ask a client when they're talking about planning for long-term care needs is if a long-term care event arised, who is the person that you are going to call that's going to help coordinate the care? And then just stop talking.
Yeah.
Because if they don't have, if your clients don't have that sort of plan in place and cannot answer the question, It's an avenue that the advisor can pursue because it just shows that there's so much more conversation that needs to take place. And as somebody that is going through this right now, when you have to figure out the care that is needed, and the people that need to be involved while this is happening in real time, it is extremely stressful. And there's really no need to for anyone to have that added burden or stress put on their family, considering what is available in the marketplace today. The solutions that are available today were not available 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Kathy. And I will say, Wayne, if you're willing, we also have an innovative product now for this that where at claim, you don't even have to pick when you place the policy whether you want reimbursement or indemnity. It's a policy where at claim you can decide. And I think it's some tremendous flexibility. It's known as life care. I don't know, Wayne, if you want to take 30 seconds and share about that, but that's an innovative way of going about this as well.
Yeah, it is. It's our new hybrid long-term care policy. And not only a claim, you can actually switch if during the process. You could be on claim and have picked reimbursement in the beginning and then switch it over to indemnity. Actually, I should have said it the other way because you probably would do it the other way. You probably do indemnity first because of the first stage that Mark talked about. But then you may want to switch to reimbursement because it's a tax qualified, both are, but you can go above the per diem when it's a reimbursement. So you can pick and choose as you go, not up front. You can do it at claim and during claim. So it's a lot of flexibility in that product. Totally
Yeah.
unique.
And what I love about that, Kathy, is you don't have to have your crystal ball. When you're
Right.
placing the policy, you can just get the coverage and then it's flexible for what you need when that happens.
Hey, Mark, we do have a question that came in, and that is for the business owner. They always ask, can they deduct premiums in any way through LTC premium as health insurance expense? So they're trying to compare the health insurance expense with the long-term care or linked benefit premium.
And Wayne, do you want to take that one? I know you get that question a lot.
Well, on the long-term care policy or the hybrid policy, there is a way to set up and we can separate out the expenses for the long-term care, which would be the deductible portion. So we can get more information out to you on that one, Kathy, and to whoever asked the question.
Yeah, and I would say generally speaking, Kathy, it also depends on the business structure, of
Right,
course. Like if it's an S corp and it's a pass through, they might not be able to do it for themselves. A C corp, certainly there's a way
right,
to do that, but it's something that for employees they could if they can do things like that. But yeah, it's a complicated answer to a complicated question for sure. But I think what Wayne said is important too, is that the life care product is structured now as a hybrid product. It separates out the cost of the long-term care rider itself, and so that is a separately identifiable cost. So for those business owners and people that can deduct it, it's available in that product as well. They'll be able to calculate it.
right.
Thank you. Wayne, is there anything specific that the advisors need to focus on from an underwriting perspective regarding the life care product?
No, not really. Although we have we can do preliminary underwriting, and we have a sheet of knockout things that you should become accustomed to, and we can get that out. Look through that and ask those questions of your client before you get the process started. That's important. And this life care product is all digital. There's no paper involved, so we could get answers in a 24 to 48 hours. But if we have more questions regarding the person, we're trying to get them in short. So, so if sometimes when they're answering questions, they're not complete, so we can go back and actually begin to underwrite it. We could actually ask for an attending physician statement. The other thing is it's not a pass fail. It's not yes, you're accepted or no, you're not. You can have a preferred underwriting offer You can have a standard non-smoker, you can have a standard smoker, and you can also have what we call, I'm not sure I like the term, standard plus. Standard plus really means we're up to table four. We could include them. So what we're finding is we're able to insure more people because of that, and the preferreds are actually getting preferred rates, which is nice.
That's terrific. Gonzalo had shared with us in the webinar chat when you talk about caregivers and family members having to provide the care because the planning that we all would hope to have put in place perhaps has not or has been delayed. That there are studies around the growing incidence of psychiatric problems for caregivers, alcoholism, and substance abuse, and that it's really sad to see your children breaking down as they care for you. So when I think about that statement slash comment and as it relates to uh, business owners where there is succession planning within families, and you've got G1, G2, G3, and G1 is still involved in the business but now has a long-term care event that has surfaced, and perhaps it's G2 that has to provide care but is also involved in the business. That takes away from the effectiveness of the person in the business in order to provide for the care. Or you wind up relying on a daughter-in-law or a son-in-law to provide care for, an in-law as opposed to a parent. So the whole thing just becomes very stressful, and there's a domino effect if that planning has not occurred. And the tentacles reach so many different aspects of the business owner's lives.
Yeah,
Right.
if I can just jump in here, I was just Googling some data on this. 40 to 70% of caregivers experience clinically significant symptoms of depression, with
Wow.
25 to 50% meeting the criteria of major depression. Cleveland Clinic says that 36% of caregivers suffer from depression and anxiety, which is 114% more than non-caregivers. So imagine a child who's helping you in the business, and all of a sudden you're out of the business, your child suffering, depression, et cetera. It just turns into a major, major issue.
Well, I think
So,
Gonzalo too, if you watch TV enough, there's those commercials on TV for care.com, a place
yeah,
for mom,
yeah,
all these caregiving places, and it looks wonderful on TV, right? But
yeah,
what they don't tell you is that assumes you either have the money to pay those people or you have a policy to
yeah,
help pay for those people, right? I mean, and that's really, I think the maybe there's a misconception somewhere where people think Medicare pays for this or other things pay for this, right? And boy, it's such an important topic what you're bringing up. And I think to your point, Kathy, I sensed in you that I think you said you're dealing with this now. Don't be afraid sometimes to bring out the emotion. I've literally been bawling telling my story sometimes to client, and I'm not trying to shame them into something, but don't be afraid sometimes to really bring that out because it is painful. It's very painful. It's bad enough if you have money and have coverage. It's even worse if you don't. Right? It's even worse.
Yeah, well, I think they say that the most effective sales are the ones that are personal.
Mm,
And when you can relate this to yourself, a family member, a loved one, a really good friend, you come to the conversation from a totally different perspective.
yep.
And it's something that we're all going to go through. And it's a conversation that really should be had and uh, Gonzalo and I often hear, well, what can I talk, what new can I talk about? Give me something new to discuss with my business owner clients. And one of the things that I often think about is if we look at the check the box kind of have you covered some basic tenets of planning that should be in place. Are all those boxes checked? And this is certainly one of the most important ones that requires a significant amount of attention
Mm,
because the cost of it of not having protection in place can derail the best of plans that have been put in force.
yep. Well, back to that. that idea, Kathy, to your point about what's my retirement plan, right? And if you think about it, becoming a long-term care chronic illness patient is a forced retirement for many of them. So what does that mean? Now you're going to sell the business to pay for your coverage, right? Was that the plan, right? So I think that's a great point you bring up, is that that gets into that discussion as well. So it is a domino effect for sure.
Well, the other thing, Mark, is that the long-term care policy protects, ensures your retirement plan. You're
Mhm.
not drawing out of your retirement plan because those expenses still are there. These are added expenses. So what this does is it protects that pot of money that you've accumulated for retirement.
Yep.
So I think
N-
that's a big way.
Never mind protecting the very assets that many of the folks on this call are managing, right?
Right.
So if you think
Exactly.
the first place they're going to come to ask for money to pay for the
Right.
care expenses are going to be the very portfolio that you're managing. So protect your portfolio, protect the asset, and obviously you're going to do some good stuff for these patients as well.
That's
The
right.
other thing that comes along with our policies, whether it's a life policy with the rider or the separate life care hybrid long-term care, is an organization called Helper Bees. So if you're driving down the road and you see a facility and it's like I've never been in there, wonder what's that's like or whatever, you can call these people when the need comes up for mom or dad or whatever and say, okay, this is the need we feel that mom or dad needs. What's within a 10-mile radius of my home? Because I'm the one going to visit. So what's available? What are the costs, et cetera, et cetera. So they can help, and that I think is a big thing because it can be completely overwhelming.
Absolutely. If you have any questions or comments, please type them into the Q&A or the chat. As I mentioned in the when we kicked this webinar off, uh, the B.O.S.S Owner Solution System webinar series is a 5-part series, and we have been privileged to have Mark for the first 3, and he will be here for the next 2. The next webinar is going to be on August 26th at 12 noon, and we're going to be discussing AIRS, not AIRS, but HEIRS. And the 5th part of the series is going to be on September 25th at 3 p.m. Those are all Eastern times. And we're going to be talking about within the B.O.S.S system, John Hancock's guaranteed issue solutions for business owners. Mark, maybe you could give us a teaser for both the August 26th and the September 25th webinars and what our audience can expect.
Yeah, great point. So for the next one, for the heirs, one of the things that's really important, everybody should do estate planning, of course. I think the misnomer and the misconception to many out there is that estate planning is estate tax planning. And so many of us that aren't that wealthy, right, may think you don't need to do the planning. And especially the one big beautiful bill now has passed, and it's 15 million estate tax exemption per person. So that's significant. But there's a lot of small business owners out there that may not be worth that, but they deal with something else. And we'll talk about this, but it's estate equalization, because a business owner, what ends up happening is most of their estate is probably the business. And so, how do they pass that on successfully to the heirs that they want it to go to while equalizing it for everyone else? So that's a really big deal now, and we'll talk about that. And then the final one, the guaranteed issue one, I think what you'll see there is this idea of being able to go to a business owner and offer something that's a true executive benefit. We talked a lot about this idea of key people and key executives. We're looking for a minimum of 10 here. So it's, these are going to be these bigger companies that have 10 well paid executives. But for those that do, to be able to go to them and offer something like this. And what you're going to see is that we looked at this a little bit differently. And it's not just life insurance with cash value anymore, Kathy. It's also this idea of chronic illness, being able to put that on a guaranteed issue chassis, as well as, if you're familiar with our Vitality program, a true wellness benefit that you can offer to a group of employees. So it really does change the story and makes it very powerful for a small business owner.
Thanks, Mark. We are looking forward to those upcoming webinars. Mr. Baldwin, is there anything else that you would like to add before we conclude this webinar?
Mr. Baldwin. Wow, I
Mr.
love it.
Baldwin.
Yeah. No, Mark, these have been awesome. And Agency One, thank you for the opportunity. And those on the call, please ask any questions you have. I mean, I know how this works. You know, this afternoon or tomorrow, you'll go, oh, I wish I would have asked that question. Well, ask it. And we have it. I would tune into the next two for obvious reasons. Mark's good at presenting. I think you can utilize it's basic stuff, but it's presented a little bit differently. So, but thank you for joining us.
On behalf of Agency One, Mark, Wayne, thank you very much for for sharing your time, your insight, for helping educate our advisors, and for always trying to make me a little smarter than I am. On behalf of Agency One, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, if we can help you in any way, please reach out to myself or to Gonzalo or to Dennis Bartos or your case managers. We are happy to help. This webinar and the entire B.O.S. webinar series that we have hosted so far have been recorded. You can find them on our website. And as Wayne said, if you think of a question after the webinar and you'd like to get that answered, you'd like to connect directly with Wayne or Mark, we can certainly help to facilitate that. And we thank you for your time this afternoon and hope that you will join us for parts 4 and 5 of this series. Have a great afternoon and rest of the week, and thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Bye.
you.